right, in another episode of Steve Talks While Driving a Car, I am behind the wheel of my 2009 Infiniti M35. This episode's actually about a big brake upgrade that I did on this car, but I want to give a little background on the car itself before jumping into all the work that we did to do the brake setup on it. The M35 is actually one of my all-time favorite cars that Nissan ever produced, Nissan or Infiniti. And this car is the Y50 generation, so 2006 to 2010, maybe 2005 to 2010, don't remember exactly. But this is a post mid-cycle refresh. So in 2008, they did a mid-cycle refresh on these cars. And then they actually made some incremental changes as well, just year to year. And these cars, the M platform was available with either a 3.5 liter V6 or a 4.5 liter V8. If it was a V6, it was an M35. If it was a V8, it was an M45. I specifically wanted an M35 and not a 45, and that is not because I like the VQ engine, but it's because I knew I wanted to do an LS swap in this car eventually. And since I already make kits for the V6 350Zs and G35s, there's a higher likelihood of part commonality with the V6 car than there is with the V8 car. Not to mention V6s are more common and whatnot. I also knew I specifically wanted a post mid-cycle refresh car, so 2008 or newer, because I like the way the sport model bumpers and all look on the post refresh cars better than the pre-refresh cars. This is actually a 2009 two-wheel drive sport package car, which means it has the later model sport bumpers, which I like. But because it's a 2009, they actually made a late change in 2009. So they refreshed the body style in 08, and then in 09, they switched from the 5-speed automatic to the 7-speed automatic. And I knew if I was going to be driving the car every day for a while, before doing the LS swap, I wanted the best combo that I could get with the V6, and that's the 3.5 with the 7-speed automatic. So it's got the 3.5 liter HR motor, so it's the twin throttle body, a high rev motor that would have been in an 07 or 08 350Z. It's got the 7-speed automatic that you would have gotten in a 370Z. It's two-wheel drive, it's a sport package, and this car is actually a one-owner car that I purchased from a dealership in Las Vegas. So it spent its entire life in the desert, which was another big factor for me. Being in the Northeast, I wanted to make sure I got a car that, you know, was as rust-free as possible as a platform to start with. So it's a black on black 09, one owner, Las Vegas, Nevada life M35 Sedan. And then the only things I did when I got this car first was a set of Eibach lowering springs and a set of G37 IPL wheels with some nice Michelin Pilot Sport tires. And I've driven the car like that for about a year, and it was about time to do brakes on it. And rather than just installing new factory stuff, I decided I wanted to do an upgrade because, again, the plan eventually is to swap this car. So I wanted to do a big brake kit, and I knew that the Akebono Big Brake Kit, those are the factory brakes that would have come on a 370Z sport package or a G37 sport package. They're 14-inch rotors front and rear, 4 piston calipers in the front, 2 piston calipers in the rear. A lot of guys do these as upgrades on older Z cars or older Gs. There's brackets available for older cars to make them bolt on. It's a really great brake upgrade, like bang for the buck. You get a 14-inch rotor front and rear, you get nice multi-piston calipers front and rear, get rid of the factory sliding calipers, and you can get these brake packages from lots of suppliers out there, whether like Concept Z Performance or Z1 Motorsports or you name it, any one of these online resellers, and you can get packages as cheap as like $1,500 for front, rear calipers and rotors and pads, the whole deal. And you can get these calipers either with Nissan written on them or Infiniti written on them in silver or red for the Infiniti calipers and gray or red for the Nissan calipers. But honestly, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to give the car a personal touch. Again, this is like my personal car. This is my baby. So I wanted to do something that really set it off from the typical Akebono brake package. So what I ended up doing was buying a set of remanufactured calipers rather than brand new calipers. And those came with no coating, no paint, no nothing on them. They're just media blasted aluminum. And then I took those calipers and I put them in my milling machine to actually mill the face of the caliper. So I disassembled the calipers because they're not a monoblock caliper. They're a two-piece caliper. So they split down the middle, take them apart. And then I took the front half of the caliper, set it up in my milling machine, and just did a light skim coat mill on the face of the caliper. And the reason I did that is even though the front of the caliper looks flat, because they're a cast part, there's actually a slight crown to the front of the caliper, and we're talking like 5 or 6 thousandths of an inch at most. But I needed the surface to be perfectly flat because the plan was to powder coat them after they were machined and then CNC etch the face. So I need a perfectly flat face to CNC etch. So I put them in the milling machine, milled them flat. Then after they were milled, I sent them out to my powder coater to have them powder coated. The color that I chose is actually a Prismatic Powders color Illusion Orange. So it actually changes from like a golden yellow to a deep orange depending on the angle and the sunlight. It's a really cool color. It's really closely matches the orange that LOJ kind of uses in our corporate logos and things like that. So big fan of that color. So I had the calipers powder coated. Once I got them back from powder coat, I set them up in our CNC machine, and on the rear calipers, because the face of the caliper is a round circle in the back, I CNC etched the LOJ logo onto the rear calipers. And then the front calipers are more of a rectangular shape, so I actually CNC etched LOJ into the front calipers. And it took a lot of setup. It was a lot of time and effort to do this, but again, this is for my car. I like doing things different. I like doing things that are unique and real attention to detail. So once I had the calipers powder coated and once I finished CNC etching them, then it was time to reassemble the calipers. And assembling calipers is not really rocket science. There's rubber seals that are inside the bore of the caliper that the piston slides down into. There's dust seals and there's retaining clips that hold the dust seals in place into the bore of the caliper. The seal itself just sits in a groove in the piston. You can use compressed air to blow the calipers apart. You can assemble them by hand. I'll be honest with you, it's a lot easier to assemble and get the pistons in place if you have somebody to help you. Fortunately, I had Jay helping me in the shop the day that we were reassembling the calipers. So it made it really easy to get the calipers put back together, at least to get the pistons back into the calipers. That's the hard part. Once the pistons are back in the bores, it's honestly really easy to just bolt the two halves of the calipers together. Just always making sure that you use brake fluid itself as a lubricant on the seals, and brake fluid basically where any rubber seals are going together on the calipers. And then also making sure you have the O-rings in place that form the fluid connection between the inside and outside halves of the calipers. Also have to make sure after powder coating that there's no dust or debris or anything, residual powder in any of the passageways that the brake fluid needs to pass through. Get that all cleaned up, and then it's just a matter of being a little meticulous about reassembling, but bolting the two halves back together, using Loctite on the bolts that hold the two halves together and torquing them to spec, and then your calipers are ready to be installed. And instead of just installing the calipers with stock rotors, I elected to actually purchase DBA, or Disc Brakes Australia, two-piece front rotors. I actually used DBA rotors years and years and years ago on a Toyota Land Cruiser that I built, and I loved the way the rotors felt. The pedal firmness, the resistance to fade, the resistance to warping. It was a heavy truck that I actually towed with from time to time and did a diesel swap in, so, but that's besides the point. But I just really like the quality of the rotor, the fit and the finish and all that, so I decided to use their two-piece rotors on the front. Unfortunately, DBA doesn't offer a two-piece rear rotor, so I used their single-piece rotor in the rear, but it has the same, as they call it, kangaroo paw, both drilled and slotted pattern on it. And then for the brake pads, I used a Power Stop brake pad that's kind of like their high performance street pad. It's the closest thing you can get to a track pad that still has good characteristics for driving on the street. I do autocross this car on occasion, but primarily it's street use. Sometimes my wife drives it, so I didn't want like a crazy aggressive track pad that you need to get a ton of heat into it to work. It's got to work for a street car. I used some stainless steel brake lines from Concept Z Performance for hooking up the Akebono rotors to the M car. They have a part number that works great right off the shelf. And really it was all bolt-on. For the M car, there's no adapter brackets needed. The Akebonos bolt right on in the front and the rear. And then it was just a matter of assembling brakes and getting the system bled. And honestly, the finished product looks awesome. It's a totally different look than the typical Akebono brakes. The illusion orange color really pops with the black car and the shiny gunmetal wheels, the IPL wheels. It really sets it off awesome. And the braking performance is leaps and bounds better than what the factory brakes were. They can't even hold a candle. The initial bite is great with these pads. The fade resistance is awesome with the larger diameter rotor that has more heat capacity. It's just a really nice upgrade. So I wanted to do a little video talking about that and just showing you some of the footage of doing that work. Let me know what you think about this upgrade. And you know, we'll be doing more videos of this car in the future. Maybe I'll post some autocross videos, but when the day comes to do an LS swap, we'll do a full build series on that, of course. But for now, this is just a standalone episode just about the brake upgrade on this car and to give you a little introduction to the car itself. So thanks for tuning in. Again, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you find out when any of our new videos come out for any of the other crazy projects that we're doing. And thanks so much for tuning in. Take care.